Welcome to ONSITE with TED. I'm TED. This podcast was originally an internal training tool designed to create a better understanding of today's industry as it constantly evolves. We appreciate you watching. Please remember to like, subscribe, and share.
I'll defy the night. I thought I knew what was right. Every time I tried to justify. What was it you did wrong?
Stare at me and wonder what it is you've done wrong. I'll build you up to tear you down, and I'll do it again.
Welcome to ONSITE with TED. I'm TED. We've got Ryan Hayes, the Director of Business Development with WCS, and Brooke Polk with IADC. So introduce yourself, Brooke.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is Brooke Polk. I'm the Vice President of Accreditation Operations over at IADC, and I get the pleasure of managing all of the subject matter experts in the industry that come together to create all of our amazing accreditation programs.
I like how you say that's a pleasure. Yeah. Ryan.
Well, we appreciate you being here and really getting a chance to kind of open up the doors of IADC, especially to instructors. And, what we've seen over the last, couple years is a much more open atmosphere where we can really talk back and forth. And, we appreciate it. And thank you for coming, because this is really, I know we're going to have to get some great questions from the audience. And,
Like, since the last couple of years, it really does seem like it's not G4 classified anymore, right? Like, I don't have to worry about being shot if I find something out.
Yeah.
So I've actually been looking forward to this one because we get a lot of questions, and we're like, look, dude, I'm not IADC, I don't know, So, once again, everybody, please direct your questions through the chat. Producer Manny will read them out to us in a timely fashion. We'll put you into the batter's box, sponsored by the Homegirls. If you're looking to buy or sell a home in Houston, please give them a call. So you want to get started?
Yeah,
You ready?
let's do
All
it.
right. What are a few of the things that you're particularly proud of or excited about that's happened over the last few years that you've been a part of?
Well, first I'll start with back in 2015. I'm sure a lot of you remember when we transitioned over from Well Cap into Well Sharp, and I got to lead that project, and it was a huge undertaking because the new IOGP 476 guidelines had come out, and it was just a whole shift of how we train people in well control. So being able to launch that and the online assessment and the proctoring and enhancing the integrity of the program as a whole was just really rewarding, and we've seen amazing things happen with that program. Another thing that I'm really excited about, when COVID happened, pretty much it was shutting down our industry. So we had to be very flexible. We had to move quickly without sacrificing the quality and integrity of the training, because that's the last thing you want to do is move quickly and have less integrity. So we were able to put together our Well Sharp Live program, roll that out within 3 weeks, which is just an amazing feat in itself. And that program has been in place. We're still utilizing it today and continue to enhance it. So that was huge for us. We were able to keep industry up and running, keep our people working, keep our industry moving, and doing that without sacrificing integrity was just a huge accomplishment for industry as a whole.
We actually really enjoy the Well Sharp Life.
Yeah, and that's something I think.
I think I wore basketball shorts for like 4 months. As long as you look good from here up, nobody cares, right?
But I think it was such a technological leap forward for well control training, right? And it, to me, gets a lot of things for the audience, that consumer, I guess would be the best way to put it. Because now we can touch them throughout the entire world. They don't have to come to Houston or, Casper, Wyoming, or Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Or stay away from their families.
Yes.
Right? We were away from our families in the field enough that I can go home, I can still get my training, and I can be there when my kids get home from school, right? And that to me, that means a lot.
Right,
know?
absolutely. And, now we look back And we kind of laugh about it because we had been talking about doing virtual training and moving into that environment for a while. And, what's the best way to do that? And analyzing it with the Well Sharp Advisory Panel for months. And then COVID came and it was like, okay, well, you don't really have a choice if you want to keep running and keep our industry moving. We were kind of pushed into it, which we're really glad happened because our industry was forced to make that change a little bit quicker than we probably would have come to. And I think it was really for the benefit, not only from a training perspective and adult learning theory perspective, but for a work-family balance, like you said. And what it did is it opened up training, like you mentioned. We allow everybody in the world now can come and get Well Sharp training, no matter where they're located, without having the additional cost, expense, and time of flying around the world to have that good quality training.
Yeah, and I don't really see a decline in the training between in-house or virtual. It's more of a personal preference, right, or a generational thing.
So over the last 3 years, we've seen maybe about 150 to 200 students on average per month decline, which in the scheme of things is not that big. And we've seen about that same number transition back to in-person. And what we're thinking based on the analytics is, when COVID came, everybody was forced into that virtual environment. Now we're having that first group come up for recertification. So what we're think is happening is they're coming back in person and maybe looking at that altering of doing every other year virtual versus in person. So we see those little numbers kind of give and take a little bit, but it's still strong. There's still a lot of utilization, and we have some really exciting changes coming with our virtual training launching January 1st that I think we'll see those numbers continue to increase.
Is this little insider information here? What do we got going on?
It is, but you'll be getting a notice next week on some of it. We implemented a new proctoring company that has enhanced features, especially around instructors communicating with the students, which I know has been a pinch point for a lot of the students and instructors. So it's enhanced capabilities, it's more technical support for the instructors and the students, more open lines of communication during testing, and for question review after the assessment. And then we're also looking at ways to just make that more accessible, more affordable from that perspective as well. So I think in January 1st, we have some really good changes coming. So I'm gonna keep you on pins and needles a little bit with that until January 1st.
More questions. Okay, well, I do have two questions. One, my brain's lagging this morning, so it finally rebooted. You said you've seen about 100 and 150 decline. Does that coincide with rig count?
It does not. So what we're actually seeing is, regardless of what the rig count is doing right now, we're seeing a steady increase over the last 3 years in well control training. So even though the rig count is fluctuating a little bit, and we anticipate, at least onshore, for it to stay kind of flatline next year, we may see offshore go up a little bit. If you were at the IADC Well Control Conference, we had a lot of individuals give their analysis of what the market will look like in 2024. But we're seeing that constant uptick. So just to give you an idea of training, like in 2021, we had 2,300 students come through per month. And when we moved to 2022, we had 2,600 coming through. This year, we have 2,800 coming through. That's only for in-person. So we're seeing that constant increase year after year, regardless of what that rig count is doing.
Okay. I just thought it made sense in my head because the same well that I drilled, 10 years ago is done in a third of the time, so I only need a third of the rigs, right? So, okay.
Well, and you speak of, what are you guys seeing with the barriers from the industry on virtual? Because we've run into this where people still don't have the concept that it is truly an IADC Well Sharp. And
or the misconception that it's still cyber-based, right?
Yes. Are you guys fielding a lot of those questions as well? Because that's one of them as we go to the companies and say, hey, we have this available. This can save you a lot of time, a lot of money. They go, well, it's not approved. And so that's been a backlash that we've seen. Do we have is there a plan to kind of campaign maybe this a little bit more through IADC?
Yes, absolutely. So every time we're out and about in industry meetings or at conferences, I speak at a lot of industry events and conferences, we always make sure to talk about both pieces, both our in-person and our virtual training. You know, adult learning research has shown that the blended approach is really the most effective approach anyway. So we always make sure to highlight both. We field those questions as they come into IADC, but sometimes when we have companies that truly don't understand, we have training providers such as yourself reach out to us, and what we can do is we schedule calls between our commercial training providers and those companies, and they can have a direct line of communication with me, and we walk them through the ins and outs, what it is, what it isn't, and we answer those questions. Another thing that we often do is do an endorsement letter. If they don't have the time to meet with us and they don't really have those questions, they're just looking for that formal way to say, yep, it has IADC's stamp of approval. I've issued letters explaining that to them, and those will come directly from me to their company contact. So we can certainly collaborate and help you with that.
Thank you. Yeah, that'll help a lot, actually.
Yeah, well, I want to go back to one of the other questions that popped into my head, but you said something about cheaper. And oh, we got a question coming into the batter's box. Somebody's stepping up to home plate. Who's in the batter's box, Manny?
We got Mike Howard. He says, why do the student certificates differentiate between Well Sharp and Well Sharp Live Completion?
Thank you, Mike. I hope you're doing well. I haven't seen you in a bit, so I hope you're doing well.
I'm doing well, thank you.
So when we started doing that and we launched Well Sharp Live, it was actually a request that came from operator companies. They wanted to be able to differentiate their employees and who was taking virtual training and who was taking in-person training. Part of that is from an analytics review. Back then when we launched it, we didn't really have all the industry-specific data that said virtual is just as effective as in-person. There was a lot of research out there, but not in oil and gas in particular. So they wanted a way to see which of their employees were taking those, not only from an analytic perspective to see how they were performing. Are they performing the same? Is one performing better than the other? But also for some, they wanted to be able to send them every other cycle. And that helped them differentiate very quickly who had already taken virtual and who was in queue for an in-person training. And it gives us really good analytics as well to differentiate those in our system, because now we have the analytics over the last 3 years to say, look, virtual training students are performing just as well as in-person training.
Yeah. Well, one of the things, like I'll tell her. I'm the guinea pig. I guinea pig everything. So like all of the instructors that come in to learn to teach, they test under my name, right? If we're going to try something new, I do it first, right? That way, like, I can see what's going on and try to fix it, adapt. And we've been experimenting with blended training for, like a year now. Yeah. And what I notice is, and it's like, if you can fall asleep in my class, like, you must be tired, because I play with your emotions, right? But the change in the sense of urgency, or the change in their body language. So what I'll do is I'll have like Scotty or somebody zoom in. I'll still be in the room, but Scotty's actually doing it, and they're watching him, and they set up. And it's because they know he's going away, right? They got 2 hours to get whatever they can get out of this guy, and he's going to disappear. The instructor that's sitting there in a room, I can bug him on a smoke break. I can bug him while he's on lunch. I can call him at night. The guy on the screen, he can't do that to. Right. So the sense of urgency is there, and they actually pay attention more.
Yeah, I think it's really, really interesting to observe their body language, especially when it comes to training. And one of the things that we've said and will continue to say with virtual training is not for every instructor. It takes a very special, skilled, highly skilled instructor to be able to facilitate an effective virtual training.
Yeah.
And when you see that body language and you see that student perk up and pay attention, you know that you're facilitating the training effectively, because facilitation, all of you are aware, is a skill all in itself. And it's also a skill that people don't truly understand. You know, I come from an education background, so I've had extensive training in how to do those things, how to instruct, and how to gauge the audience and grab their attention. A lot of industry came from industry, right? They have learned from the field, and they've learned from watching and observing and mentoring and having those people impart that knowledge on them. So facilitating that knowledge has often been foreign to them, and it is a transition. It's a whole change in your mindset. If you've ever gone through the WellSharp Plus facilitator course, people are shook.
Yes.
You go through that day one, and it's so interesting. I love to observe that class because they say, man, I really thought I knew how to train. And you do. You know how to train. The subject matter expertise is there, but it's a different shift. It's not.
It's how you present.
That's right. It's not imparting that knowledge to them. It's bringing it out of them.
Yeah, people only remember 30% of what they hear, but they retain 85% of what they do. So if you make them do that, if you make them answer it, they're going to retain more, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I totally agree with you on the virtual aspect. It's not for every instructor. And
No, hell no, it's
and but yeah, and the thing with it is, we've talked about this a lot. You have the greatest in-person instructor, and it doesn't come across the screen. And it also, though, I think, and that it's a good conversation piece. I think there's times where mediocre virtual classes hurt the whole concept as well. You know, we watched an individual for another regulatory. They were trying to draw on a whiteboard and do this instead of using the technology that's there. And
Yeah, why don't you just record it and stick it on YouTube at that point?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think this is a great way to improve. And we work diligently with, our guys, and we've got a top tier group that does this.
All right. One of the things, and he'll say it too, and I actually got him to say it, so it's not his fault. But I'll stand in front of a class and I'll be like, look, what does 40-year-old stale regurgitated textbook well control state about this topic, right? And we know some of this, it's not antiquated or outdated. It's not irrelevant even. I don't know what the word I'm looking for is. We're using surrounding information, but we had to use those methods to get that surrounding information, right? And you kind of explain that to them. But a lot of what old school well control was, we don't do anymore. Like, I don't drill vertical wells. I don't use water-based mud, stuff like that. So what's IADC been doing to get the unconventional, the newer concepts, the horizontals, the oil-based muds? What have we done to do this?
So one of the things we did was we brought this to our WellSharp advisory panel, who were very aware. And one of the individuals that sits on the panel would actually say, I sure wish we would quit calling it unconventional well control, because nowadays it's conventional well control. It's not unconventional anymore.
Not wrong.
Right, and he was correct. And so we actually put together a work group through the WellSharp advisory panel with volunteers and the well control committee, and they worked for about a year developing those new concepts, and we incorporated those. And January 1st of 2022, those were launched in a new curriculum revision for driller level and supervisor level. And they also have test questions that were implemented around that in the WellSharp testing system. And we waited a year. In 2023, we brought back a work group that reviewed well control questions in the database, which this database is huge. There's like 3,000 something questions in there. And so one of their tasks was to look at those unconventional well control questions, now that we had a year of analytics, see how they were performing and make necessary edits to make sure we're really assessing what we want in the students to know that they understand the concepts. And so we were able to push those live, and as of now, they've done 580 question edits that have been pushed live in 5 different languages. And we continue to monitor that, because at the end of the day, if well control is not relevant to the current needs of the industry, it's not relevant.
That's right.
So we have to keep it moving forward.
It's a living, breathing, yes, and that's, Tony, I, and many of the people on today have been with IADC for a lot of years, right? And
He just called himself old.
We appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, and what I find interesting is what I've seen the change over the last 3 years is kind of like we said, there's more openness. It feels more like it's not stale, and it's, it's moving forward. and really appreciate that, because as instructors, a lot of times we're having to, as Tony said, regurgitate stuff that was not there, and now we have the ability to expand and lift up and move where we always
Enhance,
knew.
that's the better word, enhance.
Yeah, enhance.
Yeah.
Yeah. And IADC is really facilitating that, because now we've got the test questions to go with it. We've got the curriculum development to go with that.
I
So-
could have taught it to them before, and I teach a lot of stuff that is not on the test because it's what they do in real life. But if you teach 75% of what's not on the test, but at the end of the day, they're going to be like, hey, you know. So on that topic, you said a number, and you said over 3,000 questions, right? Now, I say it all the time, it's a hole in the ground. It's not that hard. Only so many things can happen, right?
That's
Like
right.
if there's a 1-foot hole in your backyard with some fluid in it, you're going to be confused by it. Like, shit, I don't know what we're going to do. You know, it'd be pretty simple. It's just 20,000 foot long now. So is the purpose, and the only thing that comes into my mind for the reason to have so many questions is, one, new technology. Like the industry changes faster than we're talking about it right now. Like something else new was just invented as we were sitting here, right? And then it would be to protect the integrity of the test. Because if you have a possibility of getting over 3,000 questions and you're only going to get 95 or 100 of those, it would be ridiculous to try to sit there and try to teach somebody 3,000 questions or the answers to 3,000 questions in a week. They would actually have to know well control.
Correct. So one of the reasons we have so many, well, we have a lot of different operational areas. You know, we have well servicing with 5 different operational areas, and we have drilling operations on many levels. But you nailed it. When you said the integrity, at the end of the day, in the past, it was no secret. We were trying to get people away from teaching to the test. That's why Well Sharp came about, because we wanted to make sure that when you put a person in the field and you put the safety of our environment, our people, the assets in the hands of these individuals, there is no question in your mind that they understand well control. I don't care if they understand and they know the test because they've memorized it, but having so many questions ensures that when they get different questions year to year, they actually know how to work those calculations. They understand the concepts and the theory behind what they're doing and why they're doing it. And that's what gets us competent people in the field.
If they can memorize 3,000 questions,
They know well control.
yeah, like
That's what
I'm
we
pretty
said.
sure they didn't need to bother to read the questions. All right, we have another person stepping up to the batter's box thanks to the homegirls.
All right, we actually have 3 questions, 2 from Blake.
Oh, somebody's on deck.
All right, so he says that one of the biggest complaints he gets from his students regards OGOR, well intervention, and well servicing, about the course being 5 days long. He says, what are the chances of it being, reduced to 4 days?
All we have to do is cut away 1 hour.
So thank you for that question. There's actually a work group that has been working for over a year revising well servicing courses, and right now their focus is on the oil and gas operator representative course. One of the things that's a misconception about IADC is that we're these people sitting up in some ivory tower making decisions about training in the industry, which is completely false. Everything that IADC does is approved by our drilling contractors, and nothing moves forward until we get the go-ahead. And all the work is actually done by people like these gentlemen sitting here that are subject matter experts. We, like I said earlier, we get the pleasure to facilitate that knowledge. And so they've been working diligently to revise that course, and they're looking at submitting a proposal to the Well Sharp Advisory Panel to restructure that completely to a more modular approach, where there's a core body of content knowledge, and then individuals can choose and plug and play almost the operational areas that they want to take. So if workover is what you need or snubbing is what you need, you can choose those without taking all the additional that you may never work in that type of operational area.
Makes the class more relevant to them, more
Absolutely.
interesting, they'll learn more.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
and it provides the flexibility we need so that your brain is not getting overwhelmed with information that's not relevant to your job. At the end of the day, we want relevant information to role-specific operational training.
All right.
Well, I love the module idea because it does allow for, this to expand into other areas. As we see now, federal regs starting to push towards storage and P&A, and even back into a more of a production sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're talking to me about something that's relevant to my job and I can get better at my job by being there, that's cool.
Yeah.
If you're talking to me about, let's say, snubbing, I'm never going to go on a snubbing unit.
And you're going to tune out.
Yeah. I like
Their body
what do I
language will
gotta
change
know?
completely.
Yes. One of the things I was really surprised to find out about IADC, because it's not, I guess it's not surprising, but it is, like, because you're technically a governing body, I guess, that you're ISO accredited.
We are. That is something I am extremely proud of. If anybody has gone through an ISO accreditation,
It's
not an easy thing.
I would rather go through an IRS audit.
There you go. There are, to just give you a little bit of insider info here, there are 93 different requirements that our accreditation group has to meet every single year. We have to go through an ISO audit, and I am so proud to say that we are the only well control accrediting body that holds the ISO 9001-2015 standard, and we've held that accreditation for 17 years. And the last 7 years, we have had absolutely no findings in our audit, which if you've gone through one of these audits, man, they dig and they try and find something, and it just speaks to the quality. We want to hold our training providers to that high level. That's why we do audits of all of our commercial and in-house training providers. So if we're going to do that to you guys, we in turn should hold ourselves to a super high standard, and we take pride in doing that. And I think that's why you've seen our programs be so successful.
Yeah. Like, hell, I got audited a couple of years ago, and I didn't know who he was, and I was just being me, right? And then they told me who he was. I was like, well, maybe I should have calmed down a little bit. Oh, we got somebody else stepping up to the plate. Who's willing to take a swing right now?
Same questions as last time. I said 3. Sorry about that.
We're enjoying our conversation, man.
sidetracked,
No.
sorry.
I don't need your judgment.
And I don't want to cut you off. That's why I don't like raising my hand. But let's get it. Blake also says, what are the chances that there will be a name change for the OGOR class?
We haven't really discussed a name change yet, but of course, like I mentioned earlier, if there is a proposal to change the name, the process for that would be a recommendation would come from the work group that's actually working on that course. They would give a justification to the Well Sharp Advisory Panel of why they think that's needed, because what we don't want to do is just change it because we want to. There's always sound justification behind the decisions that we make and why we choose to do those things. And so if there is a name change that we think would be more fitting based on the new structure and design, then that certainly can go to the Well Sharp Advisory Panel for comment and vote.
I have a suggestion. No, like, it's so frustrating, right? Because I think, to me, it's self-explanatory. Operator, oil and gas operator representative. And I can't even say it. So, but no, oil and gas operator representative, that is company man, right? That's
leader.
what it says,
yes,
right?
company man, well site leader.
But
Absolutely.
like these safety trainers that sign these people up for it, they see it and it doesn't say the word supervisor on it. So then I end up getting frack dudes in a drilling class, and I weed them out on Monday morning. Like, look, man, you're in the wrong place. Well, this is what they said I got to take. And I'm like, and no, you don't.
Yeah, something else that can help with that, and we can reiterate with our companies that sign up. If you go to the curriculum documents for any well control course that's a Well Sharp program course, it will actually have in a little table around page 2, right after the table of contents, recommended attendees for these classes. Now, I know they're probably not looking at that, but if you're looking for a resource to point them to say, this class is geared towards these positions and these individuals, that will help you. It gives you a little bit of a guideline of who in industry and what role they have should be attending each well control course.
I think one of the things that we see with it that causes a problem is the ISN net worlds. And, because they run a specific list. And so they say it's got this. So it's we've had those calls where your certificate doesn't. Well, this isn't our certificate. This is IADC's, and it's a person that doesn't know what we do, trying to make a detailed discussion and tell us that we need to change what we do. And we see this a lot. It doesn't say supervisor. It doesn't. And they don't like where the name is, right? And
That's right.
And they throw. And I think Yeah, that's what one of us as commercial providers, we've got to step that up and talk with them and say, no, this is the way it's going to come across. This is the governing body to it. This is the way you have to accept it.
Well, thank goodness we're sponsored by the Homegirls, because there's a whole bunch of people stepping up the home plate today. Who do we got stepping up, Manny?
Next, we got Moo. He says,
Moo or Mo? Is it Moo or Mo?
Mohammed Saleh?
So, oh, it's Moo. Okay.
Okay, Moo. I said it right. Okay.
Yeah.
I just wasn't sure. What kind of certifications does IADC offer other than well control, like drilling operations, deep water drilling operations, etc.?
So we have an entire suite of accreditation programs, and if you go to IADC's website under the accreditation tab, you can see all of the training accreditations that we have with a description about them. But we do competent assurance management systems for how you manage your competencies and assess the knowledge, skills, and abilities of your individuals and your employees, and all of the management processes around that. So we have that as an accreditation option. We also have Rig Pass, which is our safety orientation
I
program.
think everybody has to take that.
Yeah, a lot of people are familiar with Rig Pass and Well Control. We also have the Basin United that came out. That was a collaborative effort with an operator group for Permian-specific industry training for safety orientation. So we have that as well. In addition to that, we've just launched our H2S training. If a lot of you are probably familiar with the ANSI standard, it's very broad for industry. And we're proud to say our H2S accreditation standard is specific to our industry, which has not been the case in current standards that are out there. And that program has just launched August 1st. So we're really proud about that. And then we have additional drilling industry training accreditation. We have crane and rigger accreditation. So there's a whole suite of courses. I could speak about this and take up the whole time, but if you would like more information, I encourage you to go to the IADC website.
All right, and then somebody else is stepping up.
We got Mike Howard. He says, will the API 16WS have a strong impact on the well servicing course content? And what is the best way to make sure instructors are knowledgeable in teaching the correct material?
So it absolutely will have an impact. One of the things that we do when we create and develop our IADC accreditations or do revisions is we partner with different industry organizations such as IOGP, we partner with API, and with our well servicing revisions, we've partnered with the API work group and we've invited them in to our well servicing meetings so that we have industry alignment, because everybody at the end of the day has the same goal. We want the most competent people out there, and we want to keep our industry the best industry in the world. And everybody's passionate, but sometimes we're all doing the same thing in different directions.
Yeah.
So bringing everybody together through IADC, and we like to say we're a place where people come together to create, connect, collaborate. And in doing that and bringing API in, like you said earlier, we're opening doors. Let's collaborate and make it better together and consistent. So we're working with them to streamline so that way there's not conflicting information and everybody's moving in the same direction with a common goal for industry.
And to add to that, like, we're in a really, really unique point in the industry right now that's probably, it's like a solar eclipse type thing, right? Where API 16, WL, WS, CT, ST, 53, 79-2, like there's a lot of API changes and revisions happening right now while IADC curricula is being revised. So like the unique opportunity to have them align is there, and I know you guys are taking advantage of it.
Oh, absolutely. Anytime you can get the best subject matter experts in the field, regardless if they're coming from the API side, IOGP side, IADC, the more people that we can get together.
You notice you didn't say Canada, right, Lero?
And Canada. There you go. Just the better it's going to be, because like I said, at the end of the day, there's nobody sitting here. There's not one industry organization that says, you know what, I hope they go out and they just do the best they can, or, you know, if they hurt somebody, it's not a big deal. We're all saying, absolutely not. We are the best industry in the world, and we have the best trained people, and we know how to train our people better than anybody else, and that's why we come together to make sure that the training is fit for purpose.
Everybody comes together to make the industry better, And
Absolutely.
it's beautiful. Alternative pathways, you alluded to that earlier. Would you care to elaborate? I think we kind of like took a left turn away from that.
Yeah.
And ended up somewhere out in a field in Kentucky or something. So
Hey, no.
I didn't say West Virginia.
I know.
Absolutely. So it's no secret, technology and how we're learning what virtual is changing how we historically have trained well control in the past. And it's really pushing us in a new direction. And one of the things we're looking at is that alternative pathway to certification. How do we change the way that we have historically trained people in the past? And design and develop our courses to where they have more interaction, more scenario-based training, more interaction and role playing so that we can work those complex scenarios and they can learn from each other. When you have a 5-day course that's just a lot of content, you don't have a lot of time to go through those simulations and scenarios as much as you would want. And as instructors, I can tell you, you probably hear this more than anybody else. If you ask a student, what is your favorite part and what did you learn the most from? They're going to talk to you about the scenarios, simulation, and that interaction with students and instructor.
Yeah.
And that's what we're looking for. So we're looking at ways to leverage continuous learning through our CREW database. And in the 2-year certification cycle, we're looking at what content in WellSharp curriculum can they do in a modular approach through continuous learning, and then let's hone in and really focus on critical well control concepts that need to be delivered in that virtual or in-person environment, and let's free up some of that time to allow for more scenario-based training, more simulation, more group interaction, maybe get a little bit more human factor components or
So
human performance in there.
Get away from being so equipment heavy and go into actual concept and theory.
Absolutely.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And that's something that I know I'm hearing on a daily basis, continuing it. IOGP 476 releases, and it's like a bomb exploded, right? Because now everybody's like, I've got to do this, I got to do this, and they say I've got to do this now every year, right? And so with the CREW, with this, is they're looking at expansion of the continuing ed through IADC?
Absolutely. First, what I want to say is I was fortunate to work on the 476 rewrite with IOGP. And because our members are so proactive, especially when it comes to well control, for IADC, it wasn't like a bomb exploded. We were like, check, we're already doing that. We were very proactive in CREW and continuous learning. And we're looking at, right now, the drilling operations curriculum that's currently in CREW and aligning it to what content maybe we can pull out for that alternative certification or alternative pathway, and making sure that's fit for purpose. Because if we're going to move in that direction, we need to make sure that the content in there meets every need possible for those learners. So we're in the process. We have a work group that's actually reviewing that content to make sure it aligns and specifically addresses the learning objectives in our curriculum. Once that's done, then we're going to look at expanding to well servicing and things like that. And how can we incorporate more simulation? And then how does that as a whole picture, 5 years down the road, what does that look like for well control training? So it's a big project, it's a big undertaking, but we're looking at all of those components strategically and analytically and developing that plan over time to bring it on slowly. But as we do that, we want to make sure that what we currently have is fit for purpose before we bring something else into play.
I've been rebuilding the drilling program for like 2 years now. I rebuild it every 2 years. He calls it fluid. Like, will you quit changing it? No. And then when that 476 came out, he took the initiative because I wasn't going to do it.
We audited ourselves, right?
And I was really surprised to find out that we either met or exceeded everything that was in there. Yeah. And I was like, oh, wow. All right. So then I actually read it, right? And, it's got good stuff. Like, it will create retention and help for better education for sure.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And we have a work group that's actually looking at that and doing a gap analysis between the driller and supervisor level and the well servicing courses as well to see, are we in alignment? If not, what do we need to incorporate? Why is it relevant or is it not relevant? One of the great things about our subject matter experts is they're so knowledgeable. They can say, this particular item is not relevant to this course, and this is why. And we can give IOGP those justifications and have that conversation of, yes, this is what we're taking from your recommendations and incorporating. But every now and then we may have something that we say, this is why we don't think it fits this particular audience. In particular with 476, pore pressure fracture gradient. Some of that is very engineer level.
Yeah.
So what that work group is doing is looking at what on that concept should be in that driller and supervisor level, and what specified in that 476 document maybe is for the engineer level.
Right, and then
Well, I got to ask it. There's you said it.
you see the evil Christmas Grinch grin on him.
I do. I welcome it.
Engineered level. It has been level 5, and everybody's talked about it for years. Are we seeing a future of it?
I think now with the 476 rewrite, there's more potential to get there. With the original 476 document, there was not a lot of content curriculum defined of what that should look like, which made it really challenging. When you get all of these operators in a room, which we did, was very hard because they do a lot of in-house programs, which they put their people through for years, 1 or 2 years. And it's so hard to say, let's find alignment with content and hone it down from 1 or 2 year programs into a few days. So now in 476, what I'm seeing is they're really pinpointing more specific learning objective and content that should be in that particular course. That really helps from a curriculum design standpoint. So now we have some commonality to start with and say, okay, let's bring our operators together. Here are some common learning objectives or learning topics, and then start from there. So I think you may see that in the future.
I
That
think
brings up another question.
Go
that
ahead.
I've got, but well, I had two. One is we're with IOGP 476. To clarify, we're talking about 476, not 668 yet, right? So one of the two, I guess, conundrums or confusing things that a lot of people are misconceiving in that is the way they talk about the simulations, right? And then the magical new word, Harry Potter, Expelliarmus. Wait, and I think that like pops a wand out of somebody's hand. But gamification, right? And like how is that really truly supposed to be interpreted?
So I'll tackle your first part of your question. So simulation, are we talking to simulate something, a learning concept, or to utilize a simulator? Two different things. So that's actually something that when we sit on these IOGP groups, we're able to go out and speak with our members and provide comment. That's one of the comments that I sent back to the IOGP group that's working on the simulator assessment. And they said, thank you for that. You know, we hadn't really looked at it that way. So it's keeping those conversations open because there does need to be more definition around what are you looking for? Are you looking for this to be simulated in different means, or
Yeah.
are you looking for this to be done through a simulation on a simulator?
Right, like there needs to be a clean delineation between the two.
So that's something we gave them feedback and that we're going to be working on in that IOGP group. And we'll continue to get comment from IADC members on that to make sure we're all headed in the same direction, especially because I know it impacts a lot of how you design your training.
Yeah, well, and the
So
time that it
it's-
takes
it's-
to do it too,
Yeah,
right?
it's very important to have that clear.
Simulate a blowout. I'm going to stick Mentos in a Coke bottle. We're all going to the parking lot to smoke a cigarette. There you go.
Exactly. So we're working with them and working collaboratively to provide some clear guidance around that. Gamification. So gamification is nothing new. It's just, I think when you say gamification, you think gamers, or at least
Yeah.
I do. You think of people playing these Oculus headsets and all these games and all this high-tech
With a
equipment.
really cool chair.
Right, with
Yeah.
a really awesome chair and sound and all kinds of things. And I think because you get that mental picture, there's a misconception of what we're actually talking about when it comes to a learning environment. Gamification really refers to ways to create interaction. It could be competitiveness and have that come out in a learning environment. Most of our training providers are already doing this. I'll give you just an easy example that we use, or that I've seen training providers use. They create little Jeopardy games or Family Feud type games with well-controlled concepts, and they do challenges between their tables or their groups. So it's not creating some state-of-the-art gaming app. It's creating a collaborative environment that has the interaction for learning, and you can do that so many different ways. So I would like to see industry actually put more examples around that. It's one of the things that I would like to provide feedback to IOGP, especially around that gamification standard. And there is some wording in there in one of the paragraphs. It actually goes into examples. And when you read that little paragraph, it just triggers that light bulb and you think, oh, well, we already do that.
It's nomenclature, right?
That's
It really
right.
comes into it. But
It's 4 syllables, and I don't want to go any farther.
well, when I look at it, it goes right back to the first topic, and that's live. Going when you can put guys in breakout rooms and you can do these different things, and you get it does help that end of the virtual, because now you're getting more interaction. You know, and I think that's I see a big future on it. You've already been developing it for a long time.
Yeah, well, I mean,
Yeah.
we do some of that, but like one of the things that we do, this gamification, that is, it took no effort at all, just us being naturally us.
Yeah.
We start fights.
Yeah.
And I'll get half the classroom on my side. He'll get half the classroom on his side, and we'll just argue it out like it's high school debate or
Like
something.
debate.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And it almost ended up like the fight scene from like Anchorman at one point in time, but. We got somebody else stepping up to the Homegirls Batters box.
We got 2 questions, starting with S. Britton. The question is, if you have the supervisory drilling training course with workover completion supplements, do you need to take the OGOR course to conduct a well servicing operation?
It depends on your role. So all of IADC's Well Sharp courses are role-specific training. And if you're doing drilling operations with that workover supplement, you're not typically going to be running like a company man or a well site leader the actual whole well servicing operation for workover. So if your job-specific role is more geared toward the drilling operation side, you need that drilling operation, either the driller level or supervisor level with the workover add-on, because it is a part of your job, but it's not the all-encompassing major part of your roles and responsibilities. If you are the person that's oversight of workover operations on well servicing, and you're that company man, you're that well site leader, then you need to be taking the oil and gas operator representative course.
Thank you.
And somebody's on deck. Come on down.
We got Bob Rooney. He says, what do you think is the best way to differentiate the IADC Well Sharp Live from previous IADC e-learning accreditations, which is still a point of confusion for many?
Will you say that again in English?
I understood it. We're good. So I think the biggest differentiator, the easiest way to put it, is e-learning is not a live instructor. It's a self-paced, almost CBT, like computer-based training type, where it's self-directed, self-paced. In a live environment, you have a live instructor that you can see, you can hear, you can interact with on an ongoing basis throughout the course. That's the easiest way to separate the two.
I got to go back to that first question for a second, and it's kind of it's the $1 million question, especially coming out of the golf right now. Is kind of what Scott was asking, is when considering the best course for those that are in the gray areas, is there a preferential?
Are you talking about like new hires, or are you talking about like assistant drillers?
Well, no, like a fluid hand, or it's these unique areas.
Oh, like subsea engineers.
Yeah, subsea engineers. And is there a preferred with IADC? Because we know their training matrix, and a lot of people are looking at how do we build this out. But
ROV operators.
and well, everybody's fallen into a drilling supervisor, subsea workover, because they really feel that covers everything, and in most cases it does. And there's that small intervention component. If you were in a gray area, how would giving you guys a call and kind of seeing, or, I mean,
Her phone number direct is.
It's on my business card, so most of the audience probably already has it.
but it's that unique question on it. It's because there are some of those unknowns.
Yes. So the best way, honestly, is just to give us a call, and we'll talk through it. It's easier if we really understand your day-to-day roles and responsibilities, but sometimes it's going to be up to the operator contract.
Yep.
At the end of the day, if your contract says these individuals are going to go to X training, but we've even had conversation with operators and regulatory bodies about what our recommendation is for their training and why. We had a lot of Marine people going to supervisor level course. We still see it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And we're like, so we've had those
Riserless intervention guys.
Yes.
And
We-
they're in a drilling supervisor
Absolutely.
class.
So we've had those conversations of why we recommend they go to introductor level and why those concepts are more relevant to their job roles and responsibilities. So we certainly can have those conversations. We can have them with regulators. We have them with operators. Our job is to help bridge that gap, because at the end of the day, we want to make sure whoever's working on that rig, that they're equipped to do what they need to do.
Yeah.
All right. I do have another question, and it's like people ask you what you do, right? As instructors, as being in the oil field, and it's hard to explain the oil field to somebody who hasn't been there. And so, yeah, I'm the director of training at Well Control School. What's that mean? Nothing. I'm just a dude that sits behind a computer screen, right? So, it's really hard because you're like, well, I work with IADC sometimes. Well, what do they do? Hell, I could talk for 2 hours over that. So, there's a common misconception of what IADC is, right? So they're the regulatory body for well control. No, you guys are a whole lot more than that. So, what else do we do, or does IADC do?
Yeah, so just to give you a little background, so IADC has been around for 80 years, and we're a member-driven organization. You heard me say earlier, we don't really make a move unless our drilling contractors approve us to make those moves, and that goes beyond the accreditation realm. But just to give you a few ideas of what we do, obviously the accreditation space is a big part of our business, but we have a whole advocacy team that goes to DC and advocates for the industry. Recently, we've helped with an issue in Brazil about taxation, and we're able to work collaboratively with other industry organizations to get the court to reduce the tax and not move forward with that. So there's a lot of work that happens on an international scale behind the scenes with our onshore team, our offshore team, and our international advocacy team. They're going to DC here in a few weeks to talk to individuals on the Hill and just really advocate and make sure that those decision makers there understand our industry and they understand what we do for our people and what we're doing to make sure that they're equipped and competent and that we're ensuring the integrity of our people, our assets, the environment, and all of those things. We also now include student chapters, which I'm excited about. It's huge. One of the best student chapters, yes. So one of the best ways to get the brightest candidates out is to grab them before they come out of college. So we actually have
Like the CIA.
Yeah, look.
All right.
We got to make sure we get the best talent before somebody else grabs them up. But
Fair
we
enough.
have student chapters where we connect and engage, and they've gone through internships with our companies. We invite students to our conferences and our meetings. And, a huge part of IDC is our conferences. We just had the Well Control Conference out in New Orleans, and it's a place for us to share best practices, what's going on in the industry, and how to move forward better together. We have publications, our drilling magazine. So there's just a lot of different avenues. We have all of our committees. I think we have about 18 standing committees that share best practices, work on recommendations and guidelines, all of these work groups that we've been talking about. So if there's ever a question from somebody of, can I be a part of IADC? There is a space for you. You can call me, you can reach out to our membership team, our conferences team. There's just so many different avenues that you can be involved with IADC to help make a difference in the industry.
If you're willing to help, we'll find a spot for you.
That's right.
All
We'll
right.
find more than one spot for you.
That feels like being on volunteer boards. All right, thanks to the Homegirls Realty team, we got another guy stepping up to the batter's box. Who's up at the home plate, Manny?
We got Mike Howard. He says in his field experience, he's depended, or they depended so much on flowback crews. And he wants to know if it could be considered to add a requirement for flowback crews to have IADC training accreditation, or at least a strong recommendation.
So part of the job of the work group volunteers is to make those recommendations to the Well Sharp Advisory Panel, and that includes recommended trainees for the different levels. When we're doing the gap analysis with IOGP 476, if there's new individuals or positions that should be added to those recommended trainee charts within our curriculums and course levels, we need to put that forward because we want to make sure that we're putting them in a fit-for-purpose training. And to do that, we need something to point to, that this is the actual training we recommend. Because if not, what we'll see, and we've all seen it, is everybody tends to gear towards the highest level because there's a misconception that, well, it's the highest level, shouldn't I take the best one? But that's not how training is defined in Well Sharp. It's defined role specific. So that is a recommendation that would come from the work group to the Well Sharp Advisory Panel to be added as our recommended attendees for those levels.
There's another reason for it too. You see these guys are getting promoted faster than they should be out of a lack of options, right? So if I'm going to make this dude a driller, I'm not going to send him to a driller's level class because he might be a tool pusher in 6 months. So they'll just send him to there and save some money, right?
Absolutely. So we actually hear that a lot, and we stand pretty firm by our recommendation that at the end of the day, if they're in a driller position, that driller course is the best place for them because that's where they're going to get their role-specific training. They're going to have to do kick detection and shut in the well, and that is going to really be targeted in the driller level course.
Yep.
So when you have companies that do these fast promotions, we always recommend that you at least put them through one driller level course, and then in 2 years, you put them through that supervisor level, because if not, they're not getting that targeted training on those specific skills. They're just getting a light brush of it on the supervisor level.
Is there a plan in play or a thought in play, or has it been even considered that kind of like first line, second line used to have, where you must have proof of a driller certificate before you can take supervisor?
We've talked about prerequisites, kind of like you have to have your certificate to be able to register. We haven't gone in that direction yet. That doesn't mean that industry won't move in that direction, but currently there is no prerequisite to the supervisor level. It's more of our recommendation, and we tie that to the content and what content is specific to their role, but it's definitely something that we can look at in the future.
Let's just ask the big question. What's the one thing you wish everybody would realize or know about IADC, besides that you're not like Dr. Evil, right?
I think for me, the one thing I wish everybody knew is that IADC is a small organization. We do a lot with about 50 staff members, and the reason we do so much is because of the members and the volunteers that are passionate about our industry. And we absolutely could not have the impact or the footprint that we did or that we do if it weren't for our volunteers, because they are the ones that really give their time, give their knowledge, and create what we need for industry. And a lot of people think that IADC, that we write these programs and we do all this stuff, and like you said earlier, that we kind of shut people out, but it's the opposite. We say, come on in, bring your subject matter expertise, help us. How can we get better? Because at the end of the day, we're a member service organization, and we're going to do what our members want and what our members need, and they're the ones that do all of the work. Our programs are their programs. It's not an IADC program, it's our members' programs, and it's all their work and their sweat put into these programs. So that's really important, because I want to give them credit. I don't want people thinking Brooke's up there writing these courses, because there's no way I could do what our subject matters do. I can facilitate that work, but it's definitely our members that drive and make IADC a success.
So, and then IADC, it stands for International Association of Drilling Contractors, right? But it's not just contractors. You have operators and service people, and it's not just the drilling contractors, correct?
Correct. So our name is drilling contractors in our name, and that's our key stakeholders. But at the end of the day, IADC is the place where people come to connect and collaborate. And we have operator members, we have service companies, we have training providers. Because when you get everybody in the room, you get different perspectives, you can reach commonalities, and we're all moving in the same direction for the betterment of the industry. So even though our name says drilling contractors, we open our doors and we're inclusive to everybody. And that's why we're so successful, because we're taking in all the different industry perspectives. We're providing that place for them to collaborate and move industry forward together.
Nice. And then, unfortunately, I wasn't able to go to New Orleans. I had to be displaced to West Texas.
I love West Texas, by the way.
I had to be out there for a little while, so I was unable to go. Mr. Hayes went, but he let me know what, listen to you guys and Anna, right? And then a lot of the goals that have been put forward were addressed there. So, one, what's the purpose of the goals? Two, are we on time with those? Are we running behind with those? Are we ahead of schedule? And then three, it was, if I remember right, it was MPD, H2S, and then mud gas separators, which are, they're not designed to be drilled through, but we drill through them, right? They're used improperly, they're misunderstood. So I understand why we need to go and address those. So according for your New Orleans thing, so
Yeah.
are we on time?
So we're on time or ahead of schedule. I'm really
Perfect.
excited to say. And of course, as I just mentioned, that's not because of Brooke at IADC. Our team certainly works diligently to make sure that we're keeping projects in line with timelines, but a lot of our work depends on subject matter experts and volunteers, and they week after week show up and they're passionate and they keep driving us forward because they know it's important. When there's new technology and concepts that come out, they want to make sure that those are imparted to the employees in the field. So the quicker that we can get things out, the more competent we can get our people, the better operationally we are. So our H2S program launched August 1st. We were saying by end of year, so ahead of target on that. We have an MPD accreditation that is coming out. Same thing, we had said our goal was to launch that by the end of the year. We're looking at October 1st to mid-October for the launch of that. So we're running ahead of schedule on that as well. We also have a subsea work group that's working on the Subsea Competence Assurance Program. They're running ahead of schedule on reviewing and revising those test questions to make that exam better for those subsea engineers. And they're pushing those updates live. So we were targeting by end of year. We're actually running better than we thought because it's only available in English. We don't have to go through the translations of the 5 different languages. So we're able to make edits and modify questions and have that recorded history track and push those live after every work group meeting. So we're actually making that progress every single time that they meet.
Well, that pops 2 questions in my head. The second one's going to be like a lengthy answer, so I'm going to wait on that one, I guess. But so with that, the MPD, we've been working with a company for almost a year and a half.
Yeah, actually, a couple companies.
Yeah, we've been working with a couple companies for a year and a half on developing MPD courses. How long are these courses supposed to be for, and is there a supervisor driller level like there is now? Is there different levels to that MPD?
So there's 3 course levels. There's an introductory level, and then there's an operations level, and then there's a supervisor level. So those are the actual naming conventions, but if you were to compare those with our well control levels, you're talking like intro, driller, supervisor, but they call them introductory level, operations, and then supervisory level.
Okay.
And they're running about 3 days. They're still finalizing that based on the learning curriculums. And the assessment length is very similar to Well Sharp. They have mirrored it off of those, so they're looking at about 75 to 85 questions for those exams. Same time frame for testing, about 3 hours. The passing rates, all of that information will be in those accreditation handouts, but that's what they're looking like. And also they've had those recommended attendees that should go to every level. We've actually piloted all the questions that they have vetted multiple times are in there. There's about 350 questions in there right now. We've actually gone through a piloting phase with companies these last 2 weeks to make sure the system is ready and functioning for rollout. And then they're going to continue, even after we go live, to develop additional questions. Their goal is to get to 500 questions. So we'll keep adding questions even after go live. And then we'll look at those analytics once it's been running a little bit, come back as a work group, and make any revisions to questions.
So that work group will stay together, because it really, MPDs are becoming a really living, breathing creature. It's evolving every day.
Yeah.
So it'll stay together.
It will be together even after launch, because they're still working on adding those additional questions. And anytime we have a work group and we actually launch out a program, and let's say that work group isn't meeting anymore, when we have a common topic that comes up on that, those are the first individuals that we reach out to. So we'll reach out to those past work group members, and then we'll also do an open call of volunteers through our committees and bring them back. It really helps when they've had that background of design and development and why they made these decisions. And then it's also good to have some new people come in to give a perspective moving that program forward.
So I know one of the questions is going to be there, and it's going to be, does this replace well control?
It does not. The MPD course is not a well control course. It's more geared on MPD operations. And when you look at the curriculums, that'll be clear pretty quickly. So this is not a replacement for well
It's
control.
pressure control.
That's correct.
Right.
So then the individual that would be working on a MPD system, would he need to have both?
Some individuals may be required to have both. Again, it's going to go based on your contract. But in the discussions of the development team, they actually considered, if someone has a supervisor level well control certificate, does my MPD certificate have to be so often?
Right.
They decided not to go that route, and so they did decide that, some of our individuals are going to hold their well control certificate, and they're also going to hold that MPD certificate.
Now, is this going to create the need for a revision for the definitions, the acronyms like SBP, surface back pressure, right, or MPD or RCD to be put into the acronyms? Or is there going to be a revision of the pre-existing acronyms and definition sheet? Or is it going to be its own separate one? And does that include new equations?
So it has its own separate glossary specific to those curriculums, but when doing that, part of what the work group does is they reference other definitions that currently exist in industry, and some of those may be in our well control. And then vice versa, our work groups that are working on well control will also need to look at what MPD is saying. And one of the ways that we keep that collaborative effort is on our WellSharp advisory panel. We have a permanent seat for the MPD committee chair. And so every time we meet, they're giving updates. And the reason we do that is for that alignment. Because there's a lot of commonalities and crossover, we want to make sure that we're not saying one thing here and something completely different, that we have got to stay common in our terminology to move industry forward. So we'll continue to do that.
All right. Training environments, depending upon where we are in our world. And then you said 5 languages before I get into the training environments, because I've worked all over the world. Just the culture is different, right? So what are the 5 languages? So
we have English, Portuguese, Spanish, Arabic, and then we have Chinese. And I will tell you, of all of the well control projects I've worked on and over my 12 years with IADC, language was one of the most challenging things to do, because there's so many types of Spanish.
Yeah.
And so we actually went out and did surveys for the most highly utilized version of Spanish in the industry and used all of that feedback to hone in on the one that we were going to use for well control. It's not going to fit everybody's use of Spanish, because everywhere you go it's a little bit different, but we found that commonality and we went with that. And when we translate things, especially like in Arabic, that has been really challenging.
Because it matters what village you're from, is which dialect
Absolutely.
you speak.
So we try and go with the most commonly used and referred to form of that language, but we also bring in subject matter experts in well control and in that region and in that language. And a lot of our drilling contractors have been great at partnering and giving us individuals time as volunteers to review that, because not only are they the subject matter experts, but they work with the individuals in that region. So that helps to hone in. And I didn't think about it, but things like monkey board, when you translate that out, that doesn't translate word for word in a lot of languages. So it's fine tuning those little things and keeping some of those words in English, because when you translate it out to that language, it says something completely different. So it was definitely a learning opportunity for us, and I think we're just getting better and better, but the use of those subject matters has really helped.
Right.
Do you see an area that's growing, maybe more unexpected? Yeah, are we looking at Southeast Asia? Is it, Middle East? Is it Europe? For IADC?
Yeah, for us, when I looked at analytics, actually this week I looked at them, what's interesting to me is the growth in Argentina and how much of that is taking up the virtual environment.
Really?
Yes. So the majority of the classes, I'd say about 80% of Well Sharp Live classes are Argentina,
And the other 20% is us?
U.S., typically.
All right.
That's interesting.
But it's very interesting. But Middle East is always growing. That's great. We've seen a little bit of growth in Canada. Really, it's growing in every area.
Well, it's like hearing coming out of China and different areas
Yes.
now, and realize, Malaysia. There's 20 schools in Malaysia now, and it's like, wow, I didn't think support.
No, a lot of your expats are Malaysian.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you start looking at those, and you go, wow, you don't think of those numbers like we look at.
There's
some
I've been
hard workers,
working. I was fortunate enough. I got to meet with the Angolan government at IADC and helping them establish well control training and what that should look like, and just bringing training into these new countries. And, we've been to Ghana and Guyana and all of these places that are up and coming, and it's just exciting to see the energy around that and to watch well control and accredited well control come into those areas. So that's exciting.
And obviously it's got to be affordable for them, right? Does it? No, what were we talking?
I
I don't want to say the country, but we were talking with a specific country, and the cost of a certain well control was too much per person. Like the government itself couldn't afford it.
I think cost always plays a factor. And, one of the things IADC we don't really get into, as you all are aware, we don't set the cost of training. We allow the market to set that cost and our training providers to set that. But one of the things we try and do is, certificate test codes and things like that. We always advocate and try and get the price to be as reasonable as possible, because at the end of the day, IADC is a nonprofit organization. So we're going to have to run our systems. We're going to have to make sure they're effective. The quality is there.
Hey,
But
the NFL's a nonprofit organization. I'm just saying.
But, at the end of the day, we're member funded. We're member driven. Our executive board analyzes our budget, and they look at how our money's spent, and they direct us in how to spend that, what projects that we can move forward with. So there's always an eye on cost and making the highest quality training with the best integrity at the most affordable price, because at the end of the day, our goal is to serve our members, and our members want the best, highest quality at the most affordable price, and that's what we're going to try to deliver time after time.
Just because they're in a third world country doesn't mean they don't deserve the same training everybody else does.
That's correct.
Yeah, the economics is just the tough end of it, right? You know,
It is. Well,
when you look at it, I mean,
that's why there's A class, B class, and C class expats, right? You
Right.
pay them different levels.
and so you know, you look at it. I know the country you're talking about. But, yeah, when we looked at a base price at the lowest possible end, that was 3 years' salary for an individual. You know, and it was like, how do you do that?
Yeah,
Right?
well, like they were paying, and in one country they were paying my roustabouts $800 a month. Nobody in this country could live off of $800 a month. It's just not possible. So
Well, and I think that's where virtual training and these blended approaches really help countries, especially if you're up and coming. You know, equipment and all of that you have to go, it's an investment.
Yep.
It certainly is. Our industry, you have to invest in your people, you have to invest in training, especially if you want to maintain your license to operate. And I think being flexible in the types of training environments we allow is allowing quality training to come into these areas to make sure that it doesn't matter what country you're in, it doesn't matter where you are around the world, you have the same training abilities to get the same quality education and training and well control as anybody else around the world.
Yep.
And we're going to continue to drive for that.
it's appreciated.
Yes.
Minimum training requirements for new hires with BESI Subpart O and IOGP 476 and ANDA, right? It's becoming a regulation that they're new hires and, you know, all the way through and all the way down, like almost everybody's going to have well control. So what are the different options that we have through IADC and information available to us?
I need a little bit of clarification on that question. So are you talking about what courses you have available?
Right, so we know we have supervisor, we have driller, we have introductory.
Okay.
Are there any other options or any other available information that we can get to educate the people that, like, guys that sit behind a desk, right?
Yes.
They're never going to go out there, but they still need to have some kind of understanding because you can't tell a
Absolutely.
dude what to do in a field if you don't understand it.
Yes. So on the drilling we have two tracks. We have the drilling operations side and then we have the well servicing side. On the drilling operations side, we start with an awareness level. When you talk about people that are going to sit behind a desk and never be out there, but they still need that baseline understanding of what well control is and what our business is, that's where we're going to gear them towards. We have that awareness level for those individuals, and then we'll scale up from there based on roles and responsibilities. We'll have introductory level, driller level, and then our supervisor level. With some of those, you can have that workover add-on, and then on the well servicing side, we have our equipment operator courses. We have an introductory level course as well, and then the equipment operators are operational area specific. So you have your workover, your snubbing, your wireline, your cold tubing. You have your oil and gas operator representative, and then you have your subsea supplement add-ons for those. And then we also have our subsea competence program. That's not a training that you can go to. It's no training curriculum, because a lot of the times these subsea engineers and these assistant subseas, they gain their knowledge through hands-on experience. They're working on the BOPs, they're shadowing, and they get that experience in the field. So what that program is an assessment that industry has come together to create. So after they gain that experience in the field, there's a common standard where they can come in. It's very much like the Well Sharp exam. It actually runs in the same platform, but they apply as an individual. Their credentials are reviewed by subject matter experts in the field to make sure that they've had the time in the field and the training experience needed, and then they're approved to sit that exam. And that exam tests their knowledge in all of the areas of those positions and gives them that credential to say, you know what, at a base level, no matter where I am in the industry, I have obtained this level of knowledge for my position.
So, and it kind of comes back to that subpart O again, right? It's a common, so.
He really wanted to fit that
Yeah,
in.
I did. Well, it comes with, and it's something I've been struggling with, so it's a good question. With that, once again, that's not well control though, right? So, but tying a well control to it gives you more flexibility, right? So if you would tie an intro level to that competency, now we're meeting those BESI requirements. Now we're really coming into play, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
that's correct. So you can tie them, it's just a matter of tying them to the level that's appropriate.
Yeah.
Because what we don't want to do is tie them to some level that is way above what they will ever need, because at the end of the day, they're going to tune that out.
So, case in point or example, the reason that we were curious about this, operator required this guy to have drilling supervisor subsea. He must have a subsea certificate to get out there. He was an electrical engineer that invented something for the stack. He just needed to go out there to be present to test it. That's all he was going to do. And he had to come to well control to be able to get out on the boat, right?
At the end of the day, you're going to have to abide by your contract with your operator. But what IADC's role is to help facilitate those conversations and point them to our recommended levels and explain and have those open conversations of why this level is recommended for that person in that position. And I think that's the role that we can help play. And we've done that, as I mentioned earlier, we've done that a lot of times, and sometimes they just don't know. You know, there's just that perspective that, well, supervisor's the best, so we're going to send everybody there. But part of IADC's job is getting in the room with these individuals and having those conversations. And a lot of times they've actually had contractual changes because of that. So that's a role that we can help industry with, can help facilitate.
Another question is, recently we had the displeasure or the pleasure of torturing your people.
Yes, we did.
We got to meet a lot of really, really impressive individuals. And the more you talk to them, like, so what do you do, right? And they're like, well, I work with this acronym. And I'm like, what does that mean? Right? And they're, okay, so what do you got to do? Oh, I handle this acronym. What? So, like, there was a lot of acronyms, but, like, there was a whole bunch of real smart people that, like, were driven and dedicated that were working with all of these acronyms in the oil field and the military, right? Acronyms. What's the relationship between the acronyms?
So the acronyms for our programs?
Right, so IADC, API, IWCF, IOGP, right?
Yeah. So something about our industry, they just love those acronyms, right? But yeah, so we work with API and we work with IOGP, and those are both predominantly operator-driven groups. And then IADC, while contractor is in our name, we incorporate other individuals, those operators. And IOGP does as well. They allow IWCF, which is the other accrediting well control body, there's IADC and IWCF, to come in, and we actually represent the voice of the drilling contractors and our members. Because like on IOGP, that group is operators. And our drilling contractors don't actually have a seat on that. IADC is the drilling contractor's seat.
So you're the voice for the contractors.
We are the voice of our members, and IWCF is the voice of their members. So we're really thankful and appreciative to be able to come into those work groups and communicate what's going on with our members to drive our member needs in those. So it's different industry groups that come together, we work collaboratively, and a lot of the times if they don't have those seats for our training providers or our drilling contractors, we're allowed to be that voice for industry, and we don't take that lightly. And that voice is not an IADC voice. That voice is a member voice, a collective member voice, and we don't speak on behalf of our members without speaking to them and getting direction of how they want that to go.
So it doesn't fall on deaf ears like an electoral vote then, right?
No, I will say over the years, and I've been with IADC, I think 12 and a half years now, 12 and a half wonderful years. And I have seen the shift, just like you all said, you know, maybe in the past IADC kind of seemed like a closed book. And, how do we get in there? Yeah. And it's really opened up, and it has produced some great things for industry. My experience in my 12 and a half years at IADC was the same with all these different operator groups. When I first started, it was like, how do you get your foot in the door? And I think just constantly being open to that collaborative relationship and having those conversations and explaining that, look, we all want what's best. We all have the same goal. It's what's best for our people, to have the most competent people out there. And so we've seen that collaborative effort be successful time and time again. And what I love to have seen through my 12 years is now, IOGP calls me and says, hey, we know that you guys worked on the Basin United program and we're trying to work on this. Can you share with us how that was so successful? And it's just more inclusive, I think, and I've really liked the shift that I've seen. So now industry organizations are coming to IADC, coming to our members, allowing some of our drilling contractors to sit on their boards now, and it's just produced some amazing things for our industry. So I foresee more collaboration between all of us moving forward.
I think the whole industry has changed. We used to work for different companies, right?
Yeah.
And then we were taught that he was the enemy, and he was taught that we were the enemy. And then I ended up having to go over there, right, and take a class, and I'm just like, oh, whatever, dude, right? And then I met him, and then we're like, wow. And then we started talking, and then he's here now. But like, as soon as we met each other, we're like, what do you mean you think the same way that I do, right? So then we started working together, and it's been beautiful ever since. And then when you see these committees, and don't get me wrong, there's exclusions to the rule, but everybody that's joined and is doing this is really, it doesn't matter who you represent, what the logo on your lapel is. They're there to help better the industry, and they're really trying. And somebody comes up with a better idea than this dude, and they're like, yeah, let's do that. Right? And everybody sets pride aside, leaves it in the truck. 99% of people set pride away, leaves it in the truck before they go into that meeting, right? And it really is beautiful. It's an awesome thing to
It's
see.
something we didn't think existed.
Yeah.
I mean,
Right.
and
Yeah.
it's one of the things that really opened my eyes and made me look differently at it, right?
Yeah.
Because if it was the past culture, we're looking at a future culture now, and we're seeing that evolution of it.
Yeah.
So
My coveralls are blue.
Yeah,
My coveralls are blue.
Right. But we're seeing that, and we're moving things forward so much faster because of exactly what you're doing.
Absolutely.
You're facilitating, and we're putting people in together to work with it. So it is an
Yes.
incredible end.
Well, at the end of the day, we always say at IADC is the non-competitive space where people come, and you leave your lapel pin and your logo or your hard hat with that certain sticker at the door. Because at the end of the day, there's going to be a competitive space for everybody. But IADC is that non-competitive space where we come together and work for that common goal, which is safety. At the end of the day, safety is not a competitive space, because it doesn't matter if it happens to company A or company B. One incident, and it's all of our incident. We own it together as an industry. So that's how we have to work. We have to work together as an industry for safety, and that is our non-competitive space that you can find at IADC.
Yeah, it's like I got a really good friend of mine. He calls me Red Hat all the time. I looked at him, I'm like, I'm not a safety guy. He's like, you're a well control instructor. I'm like, yeah, you're a safety guy. No, I'm not. Right? But
What you should be saying is, yes, I am, and I'm proud of it.
it never hit me until, it may be deemed, but we're actually safety trainers is what we really truly are. It took him to, mess with me for a minute, make me mad, and
The old
so he still calls me Red Hat to this day.
the old phrase, right? Without training, you have no safety.
That is true.
And and I think that's we have to be that front line for it. So
All right, I got to ask you the nasty one now.
Okay, I'm ready for it, I
All
think.
right. The Energy Workforce Technology Council. Right, and it's a new thing. It's a new thought. Companies had gotten together to do it. I know that they had, contacted IADC and a few other regulatory bodies for help. Thoughts, understanding of it.
So we worked very closely with the well servicing organization that was AESC. And I know those two combined. So AESC had merged with EWTC, the Energy Workforce Technology Council. We go with our acronyms here.
They could have made it a little longer.
But those merged together. And the well servicing organization had similar structure and guidance and goals as IADC has for the drilling operations side, but for well servicing. So I do know recently they have come out with a specific, I believe it's 2-day well control training. And we had worked with their past president, Miss Leslie, on ways that we can collaborate. Because at the end of the day, like I just mentioned, safety is a non-competitive space. So IADC opened our doors, we've shared our curriculums, we've communicated, we're open to a gap analysis to see what commonalities that we can have, ways that we can work together to move training forward.
Just like you do with IWCF.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We actually have standing meetings with IWCF. I meet with their president quarterly. We have conversations because there's things and challenges as an industry that we can address together. Because if one of us addresses them and there's still safety issues or integrity issues, it doesn't benefit the industry as a whole. So that's where we're getting in that non-competitive space. We're looking at the industry as a whole and not individually what we're doing. And we will continue to have that door open with commonalities. We have a well servicing work group that's been working diligently over the last year to review and revise our programs. And we will continue to keep our doors open and collaborate, do gap analysis with their program, or work collaboratively to move industry forward however we can. I'm really proud of the well servicing programs. The SMEs in that group are just fantastic. I mean, top notch, best of the best in the industry on the topic. And we are very fortunate to have those individuals. And they're looking at less equipment heavy well control and more focus on pressure control. And what I love about the industry collaboration is they have API representatives in those work groups. They're aligning with IOGP recommendations. They're looking at the new recommendations IOGP is drafting for simulation in well servicing courses, and all of that is being incorporated and embedded and aligned within IADC's training. And at the end of the day, we can stand up as an industry, hand over heart, and say, we think we have fit for purpose training that meets our individuals' needs and continues to keep them safe, keep our equipment safe, our environment safe, and we're agile, we're flexible. If there's a need, changing of equipment, that we can come back together and make those changes. And we're an open book at IADC. Happy to share those changes, our updates with anybody, and work collaboratively for the betterment of the industry. Like I said, safety and well control ties right into safety. You know, that's the whole point of it. That's right. Be proud of your red hat.
That's right. Okay, the virtual is never going to go away. It's here to stay forever, right? It's a viable option for a lot of people. What do you see between virtual and in-person training, where the environment of it itself, where the learning tools or the adult style learning, I guess, right? Is it more difficult in one or the other? Is it easier in one or the other? And
I think that completely depends on the learner and the instructor. The instructor has to have a unique set of skills to teach in a virtual environment. It is not the same, and it's not just enough to have the subject matter knowledge. You have to be able to read that body language over a camera. You have to be able to convey a message that captures your audience over a computer screen. And it makes it a little bit more challenging because if you're not tech savvy, I mean, using these breakout rooms and all of that, you're going to kind of gear more towards the lecture style because that's your safe zone, that's your comfort zone. So you have to really utilize those facilitation skills more in a virtual environment. From a learning perspective, I think there's just dependent on the learner. You know, there's some people that like having that textbook in front of them. They like still reading the newspaper. You know, they don't want to look at a flip book on a computer or a PowerPoint slide. They want to actually feel it and touch it. And I don't think that's ever going to go away.
that's because of crossword puzzles.
And I mean, it's just learning style preferences. And one way never fit everybody. So I think this just gives a diversity of learning options that gears toward different generations, different learning styles, but I think you're going to see it be prevalent, especially as more simulation comes around, because that was a big differentiator. When we went to a virtual, it was like, oh my goodness, how are we going to still do the simulation? And what we've done by diversifying the environment is we've pushed industry to create more tools and more technology to make those environments just as successful as the other ones. You're starting to see the well servicing simulations come around. You're starting to see more technology with cloud-based simulation and the utilization of that. I think you're going to start to see a lot more develop from a technology standpoint. At the end of the day, you're still going to have people that want to sit in a classroom, and that's perfectly okay, because virtual is not for everybody. It's not for every instructor. Some regions of the world don't have the connectivity to even do that. So I think the more diverse that we make our training opportunities, the more diverse of a population that we're going to grab.
You've seen over the last, like you said, 12 and a half years you've been at IADC. It has to be an impressive growth. You have to be proud, because you saw it was scratch paper and tally books, and today
The military style. You will keep bottom hole pressure constant.
it's like I'm one that embraced. I loved when you did the facilitators course, because as an instructor, it was one of the first times I got a chance to go back to school, right? And it was mandated. They had to make me do it, right? So I could keep it. Do you see more progressions like that? Do you think that, IADC could be looking at saying, hey, for instructors, we'd really like to see everybody take this program? Or where does that instructor development come in for IADC?
So one of the goals for IADC is continuous improvement, and I think that's not only for our programs but for our instructors as well. And so the offerings that we now have the Basin United Facilitator course to equip our instructors. We have the Well Sharp Facilitator course, and even if you're not teaching Well Sharp Plus, I always encourage people, the facilitation techniques and tools and strategies that you get in those classes, it just flips the way that your brain thinks about training. And so it's beneficial, even if you're not teaching the Plus course, just having those concepts. And I think you're going to continue to see that. I've done some research on courses, and since COVID, the virtual environment, now you're actually seeing a lot of courses being offered from training companies that are specific tools and focus on instructors training in a virtual environment. I think you're going to continue to see that growth. And I think that's something that we can incorporate into our facilitator courses and move that forward. We have put out a little guideline document around facilitation for instructors that you can access as resources on IADC's website. So I think we're going to continue to monitor that and provide resources and training as we can, because at the end of the day, we're only as successful as our instructors, and our students are only as successful as the training that has been imparted to them.
As soon as we started doing virtual training, people call, like obstacle courses the gauntlet. We call ours the mullet. We put them through the mullet, right? They gotta go through the mullet. But we got another question in the chat. Who's stepping up to the home plate?
We have Steve Richard saying, what is the status of university certificates for colleges that teach semester-long well control courses?
So we currently have a program that's live, and it's called our Well Sharp University. It was designed for colleges and universities that have these engineering programs that put people through those semesters or a full year of well control. It's a little bit different. It's not the same certificate that they would get if they went through a regular IADC Well Sharp course. It's geared more towards students in that environment, and a big difference is they don't do the simulator assessment. They only do the Well Sharp knowledge assessment. They're taking the same knowledge exam that they would if they went through the regular Well Sharp training, so that they can come out and on their resumes and going into these companies, they can say, look, I've already have and demonstrated the knowledge of well control, which is a great foot in the door of any company to walk in with an IADC certificate, and we differentiate on that certificate that says it's a student certificate, not applicable for working on the rig site and well control operations. We still want them to go and get that full experience with the simulation assessment, but they should know what to expect, and it should be a breeze for them to go through the well control course because they've already passed the knowledge assessment. And it just brings those younger people into our industry a little bit quicker. It gets them well equipped on the knowledge before they even step foot into our industry. And it shows a collaborative partnership. It gives us an opportunity to get the IADC name out there, to get information about what the industry is about, who we are, and how they can be involved before they even get out of college. So it's a great opportunity. It's very cost effective for universities and gives that introduction to our industry and to well control training before they even step foot into our industry.
One of the biggest tools that I actually use a lot, and I don't think people realize it's there, and it's my fault for not mentioning it earlier, is the lexicon, right? And it'll tell you where the source of the definition came from, where, you know, the last date it was updated, and so, like, I'm gonna get into this. So I got into an argument with a company hand one time, and I came down with my motor hand. We're down on the ground, and I'm like trying to pick out, you know, BHA, like, hey, you need this, you need this, you need this. Pick that up, set that up first. He comes over and he says, hey, did you pull the baffle plate? What the? I'm like, what? Did you pull the baffle plate? What the is a baffle plate? I'm a Yankee. He's from South I-10, Louisiana, right? He says, you've been drilling how long? You don't know what a baffle plate is? I'm like, does it got another name, dude? I guess some people call it a crow's foot. Yeah, I pulled it. It's in a knowledge box. But, like, that's the short version of this argument, right? Like, we're yelling at each other at some point in time. So going to the lexicon, it gives you industry definition, right? And what else is there that we can learn from IADC? What else do we have?
Yeah, so the lexicon is a great resource, and just like you used in that example, it not only tells you what it is, but what resource it's come from, common names, common terms, and that's been really helpful too with translations. When I mentioned earlier, there's some things like monkey board that we don't translate because they can go to the lexicon and see in your area maybe it's called something else, just like that. So there's lots of publication resources, best practice documents on IADC's website, interviews with leadership within industry. We also highlight in our magazines and on our website companies that are innovative, new technology, new training that's going on, and really highlight the best practices and what's really fantastic and changing and new and up and coming in the industry. And it is a great resource. If you go to the IADC website, they have publications on technical publications. They have all kinds of things that you can purchase and utilize as resources to help in your training environment.
Right. This is kind of it's a sad question, honestly. With, you know, recent developments in some schools, some companies, right? Some places in the world, there is a problem with fake certificates right now, right? And they say, okay, so we took this training, so now we have a certificate. And I understand what the law says is you must have a well control certificate.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't dictate the governing body over that. But some of them have been like straight up fake. What do we get? Two, 3 phone calls a week?
Easy.
Right?
Yeah.
And I mean,
right down to the logo, right? I mean, yeah, QR codes that go nowhere. And, you know, I mean, it's incredible. And of course, you know, what's that future look like to prevent some of this?
or how do we, I understand, I know what we do, but what can we do what can someone do to find out if, you know, this is a fake certificate? Like, we've got a lot of things that have been recently invented or recently advertised, or, you know, hey, come over here, we'll get you this, you know, and they're not IADC or IWCF. So
Correct. So one of the things that we reiterate with people, and especially we have operators that come to us with a list of certificates and say, hey, can you verify these? We have built-in QR codes that link directly to a lookup on our website for certificates. And we just encourage people over and over, please verify your certificates. Take the 2 seconds to scan that QR code, make sure it's a valid certificate. Doing that will eliminate some of that. Another thing that we always say is go to IADC's accredited list of providers. We have every provider that's IADC accredited, and I know IWCF does something similar.
Yep.
Check that the training provider you're seeking training from that has this unbelievable advertised course, please go and check that they're accredited at IADC, because if they're not listed on our website, they are not IADC accredited. And you know, sometimes when we get reports of these fraudulent certificates or training providers claiming to be IADC certified, we certainly take action on our part. And anybody falsifying certificates that maybe is accredited, we take very severe action to move to program closure. We have an escalation matrix that we follow. You know, we're ISO accredited, and we have a whole process where we don't tolerate fraud. We really just take action to close training providers that are issuing that as part of what we communicate with IWCF, and make sure that they're not just hopping from one place to the other to do the same thing, because at the end of the day, it's an integrity issue. But the best thing that you can do is verify your certificates. Like you said, a QR code that goes nowhere.
Yeah.
Or a QR code that you scan and it's not that person's name on the certificate. And of course, you can always contact IADC. We do verify for a lot of operators. You can email records@iadc.org and we can verify your certificates. But being proactive and actually taking the little bit of time it takes to scan that or look up a training provider on our website, those tools are there to help maintain the integrity and to make sure that you don't sit at a well-controlled training and then present your certificate and they say, sorry, you have to go to training again. You know, we don't want that to happen to anybody. We want you with our accredited training providers, because at the end of the day, we've put them through the ringer. They've been reviewed by subject matter experts. We audit to their quality and we endorse them. And that IADC logo means something to us. It means something to industry, and we value the integrity that is behind that logo. And so it's so important to do your due diligence and just verify that on our website.
Okay. And we actually somehow, a couple years ago, maybe it was a year ago, we got that flyer, right?
Yeah. Yeah, we did a flyer up to show.
Oh, I thought
Well, we did a flyer off of it. Yeah.
okay, yeah.
To
You guys
show-
sent out a flyer and then we kind of
Yeah.
stole it from you.
Well, no, just to help the customers, because they were running into that same exact thing, you know, and they were seeing, and it's, you know, it's bound to happen anywhere. You know, we've got well-controlled schools all across the world that aren't well-controlled schools. So, you know, and it's unique ends on how people work these. But I think the important end of it is, with an IADC certificate, you've got quality training, right?
Yeah.
And you know, kind of leads back into it. We've got a way, you know, the proctoring, you know, the integrity that goes behind it.
And the biggest shock, like having worked with you guys for quite a while now, my biggest shock was there's only 50 people. Like, how do you guys do it?
Yes, there's only 50 people, but I will tell you, they are a fantastic 50. We have a really solid team and are so fortunate that the people at IADC are just as passionate as our members. But at the end of the day, I'll say it 100 more times, we can't do it without our members. I mean, if the volunteers don't show up, the work doesn't get done. And so it's everybody that's a member of IADC, it's industry, it's their commitment, it's their passion, it's their love for our industry that will continue to drive us forward. And that's how we get things done. We depend on our members. And it has just been a great learning experience. And I will tell you, our members, having those volunteers come in, those subject matter expertise, of all of those work groups just makes our IADC staff even more knowledgeable because we learn from all of you. And when we don't know, guess who we're reaching out to? We're going to call you. We're going to ask you. We're going to get your input. So that's what makes us a good, solid team. It's our members driving it forward, their time and commitment.
And that's 50 people from the really wonderful woman that sits at the front desk.
That's
all
right.
the way to
Yes.
Gerardo, right?
I wish I could say there were 50 people in accreditation, but that's 50 total. When we talked earlier about what are all the different components of IADC, we have international reps traveling the world. We have advocacy teams. We have conference teams, publications team, accreditation. There's 50 total.
Right. And how many work groups you got going right now?
Oh, if I had to guess just in accreditation, we probably have about 8 work groups going right now just in accreditation.
Like everybody's busy working all the time.
Yeah, but it is great work. And I will tell you, when you show up to work and you see the difference it's making, you see the training difference, you see how the students are receptive to it, you see the instructors so excited about the new proctor changes and things coming.
Oh, we wanted to thank you for that.
Yes, thank you.
That's what's driving us at IADC, knowing that we're making a difference, knowing that we're advocating for our members. That keeps us going. So we just thank and appreciate every single person that gives their time and their volunteer hours to help us be successful.
And then, since we brought that up, we're going to go ahead and talk about it. Oh, yeah. One, thank you for the proctoring change. It is so much more seamless now and so much easier and less stressful for the students. It's phenomenal. Please tell me it's going to stay.
So at the end of the day, of course, we always want to make the process as seamless as possible without sacrificing the quality and integrity. And our WellSharp advisory panel has brought in some different proctoring companies and looked at some of the challenges that we were having over the past few years, and if any of those services could address those. So not only looking for the same standard that we have, but how can we raise that standard? How can we provide that functionality that you don't currently have? And they've pinpointed a certain provider. We have a communication coming out next week that we're going to be shifting our proctoring over to. It's Proctor 360. It will be facilitated by M&R Group. You'll have a whole detailed communication coming out next week. But we're excited. They demoed for the panel, and a lot of the challenges, especially around the instructor interaction and the instructor communication with the student, are addressed with this new system. So we not only got the same level, but we were able to make enhancements that we think you're really going to like. And we have been piloting behind the scenes for about 2 weeks with various companies, from firewall issues to instructor communication with students to how the whole system works. And we've had great reviews on the system. So we're excited to launch it. I'm sure there'll be a few hiccups here or there, as always when you launch a new system, but we're excited. So look for a communication coming out next week on that.
And
So with
that's just going to be for the live classes.
That is
correct?
just for WellSharp Live. Yes,
Now,
correct.
does that still have to be directed through crew, or is that?
It will not. So in your notice communication that you get, it will tell you how that's directed, the contact information. It will give you a link to IADC to schedule any training that you would like for your team. We'll get on Zoom with you. We'll do in-person training to train all your instructors, your admins, whatever, to get you the most comfortable. But we're excited about it. I think it's going to be a welcome change, and really good reviews from drilling contractors and operators that have demoed the system. So we're very optimistic about it.
So the setup for the admins is going to be just a slight bit different.
Just a slight bit different.
Okay. Great. I'm willing to dump more on their desk.
Actually, what I've heard is that it wasn't much of a change from an administrative standpoint.
Nice.
Okay. That's
So
good.
that's part of the reason we piloted with so many, to see, those that have big teams, how's it impact you? Those that don't have big administrative teams, how's it impact you? And so it worked pretty good. I will say one of the panel members said seamlessly, and I noted that down. I was like, all right, I'm gonna quote you on that. We'll see if it's seamless come launch, but that was good to hear. So we're really excited about it, and I think you're gonna like the new enhancements.
Well, we're
Nice.
glad you guys made a change.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you.
We listen to our members. You drive the change, so thank you for openly communicating the challenges. Because I will tell you, sometimes I feel like people are a little bit fearful to come to IADC and communicate what's not working. And we need to hear that, because if you don't tell us, we don't know what to work on, and we don't know what your needs are. So you coming to us and being open and honest and having those conversations help us to give you what you need.
Every time I've ever had to call or talk to somebody over there, they go out of their way to help.
Oh, well, I'm glad to
Right.
hear that. I'll make sure the team, I
So-
relay that back to the team.
I guess since besides go Astros.
Go Tigers. There's some LSU fans out there.
All right. Is what would you, if you had, what would you like to say to the general population of the world?
I would just say, we really appreciate everybody. We appreciate all that you do from our industry. I'm third generation oil and gas in my family, first female. But just the passion, we work for the best industry. So no offense to any other industry that might be listening, but I really think we have the most passionate, well-rounded people that come together and collaborate, and IADC is a place to do that. And just, it's so interesting now for me to talk to my family members that work in oil and gas and know and see the difference that we're making. And it's your organization, it's you making the difference. So we appreciate that, because there's just no way that we would have the impact and the change year after year that we've seen in industry without the support of our members. So
Yeah.
we truly appreciate that.
Like I've always said for years, if the zombie apocalypse ever hits, I want 3 roughnecks, right? Because we know how to do so many different things, because you are the electrician, you are the plumber, you are the equipment operator, right? And the rest of society doesn't understand that. So, yeah. Oh, we got somebody stepping up to the batter's box. Who's at home plate, Manny?
We got Darren Fisher. Little lengthy. I'm going to read it word for word. He says, we have an ongoing challenge, particularly in the Permian Basin, with providing effective training to non-native English-speaking personnel. We've taken steps on our end to help mitigate language barriers and continually seek ways to make improvements in training delivery. What is the IADC's view of this dilemma?
So one of the things when we launched Spanish that became apparent very quickly was all of the different types of Spanish that I had mentioned. And it's very, very challenging. So what we try to do is make sure our translations are fit for purpose and they meet what the majority of our students will speak. But there's some things that just don't translate. And I know in that particular area we have a little bit of Tex-Mex mixed with Spanish. So there's a little bit of slang sometimes incorporated. So it's really hard and challenging to target everybody's specific version of Spanish. But we try the best that we can. We put in parentheses, we provide resources like the lexicon, and we allow students, even if they take a class in English in the Well Sharp exam, they have the ability to select the language that they want to be assessed in. So there's those tools, and I think that's just going to be something that we will never 100% solve. It's always going to be a challenge unless they magically have one specific Spanish in the world or one specific type of this language or that language. But it's something we're aware of and we're working diligently to address, and we will continue to do that with our subject matter experts and our translations and enhancing technology and tools. One of the great things I'll mention with the Proctor 360 that I was really impressed with will help, I think, with this language challenge is when students actually log in, they can change. I think there's like 36 languages that they can choose, and it will put all of the instructions in their native language. So they're not Spanish speakers trying to read how to do the proctoring exam in English. They actually can flip back and forth to the language. So it's using those new technology tools, I think, to help make it a little bit easier for them.
I got an off-script curiosity question. We've had 2 guys here in Houston recently come in, and they got, I'm not going to call them Robert Downey Jr. glasses, but, Iron Man glasses. So it's a set of glasses, and what it does, it's got earphone, and it'll read what's on the screen and read it to them because they can't read. So we couldn't let them use it. They weren't allowed to use it. And you get a lot of the guys that have language barrier, right? You can talk to them, you can read them the question, and they can understand what you're saying. But they don't read it, and it doesn't transpose as well as when
Right.
they read it. Is there anything that we can do as an industry to help? Because just a guy knows something or he doesn't, right?
So there's certain exceptions that IADC will make, but those exceptions go through thorough review. I'll give you an example. I've had, actually this week, I've had an individual come through that was dyslexic and could not read the exam. So we review all of the information. They submit an exception to IADC. That's reviewed, and it's either approved or not approved based on the evidence that you provide. So we have that means of exception process, because at the end of the day, we want to make sure that they have the knowledge that they need to perform that job role successfully and safely. And we are not necessarily testing how well they can read, right? Or if they have something like dyslexia, we don't want that to impede their ability to work in our industry. They may be one of the best people that work in our industry. So we want to make sure that we have avenues like our exception process that allow for those variations to be made.
Okay.
Is there any possible plan moving forward, especially with it being computer-based, where they could highlight text and allow it to read?
There's certainly some room for conversation there. We'd have to talk to our database developers, but that's something that can be brought forward and looked at, because I do know a lot of that is pretty relatively easy to implement. Being a past educator, I know exactly what you're talking about. It highlights and it reads it,
Yeah.
and you can hear the read aloud versions of it.
Yeah, like we don't actually type, we just use dictate on Word.
Yeah.
That's what I need.
It actually works really well.
Does it?
Yes.
It does. You just get,
Side note, mine does not. So if you don't know me, I'm from Louisiana, and voice to text it is not my friend. It picks up some crazy stuff, so I don't know how good that would be for
I actually
me.
changed my phone, my Siri, I changed her to a British lady, and it doesn't screw up nearly as much.
Interesting.
Yeah. Oh, we got another question. Come on down.
Oh, I've been unmuted. All right. So this one says, the issue about the languages is the translations, but beyond that, the issue is the reading and understanding capabilities, literacy in the languages. Are there plans to address this?
So I think that goes to what we've just talked about. At the end of the day, we have to choose a version of Spanish. It's just not feasible for us to put every variation of Spanish in there.
17 different versions.
Right. So we go with the one most widely utilized. And I know it's not uncommon for West Texas to actually take it in English, because for them, it is sometimes a little bit easier to have help from the instructor in translating a word or two in the English versus a whole dialect of Spanish that they're unfamiliar with. But I think it's looking at the technology that we can incorporate maybe into the WellSharp database, or it's even utilizing things like those glasses that maybe we can look at an exception for. So those are definitely avenues that we'll pursue, and things that can be done to make it a little bit easier on the students.
Like maybe if there was a control or something, like the provider or the company that has their
Yes.
well control training, they own the glasses so that
Yeah,
you knew that there was
absolutely.
nothing wrong with them, right?
And those are things that we look at when we do the review of the exception process. And, you know, when I said let's make it a little easier on the students, by no means am I talking, let's make the exam easier for them. But when you have
Like
a,
Oprah, you get a certificate.
when you have a language barrier or you have a learning disability, we don't want to keep you from being in our industry because of that. We want to provide you the tools to help you be successful. So those are the things that we'll have to look at incorporating to help those individuals.
The unique end, of course, we've done all these years, and we went from CAP to WellSharp, and we went computer-based. How many guys couldn't read off the computer, right?
Yeah.
Their eyesight, you realized how bad their eyesight was, and just would not put the cheaters on, would not get the glasses, and then they struggled through, right?
Are you taking shots?
Yes, I am. But I mean, you're right. It's not that they don't know. It's they've got a disability, and sometimes admitting you've got a disability can be the toughest thing.
Yeah, like, well, you can see the degradation of my eyes through my house because my TVs just keep getting bigger and bigger, right? All right, well, thank you for joining us. Appreciate your time. remember to like, subscribe, and share, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Bye, thanks.
We would like to thank you for watching. I'd love to give a special thanks to Manny, the producer, and Scotty, the director, for all the hard work they put in. Nobody gets to see. Please like, subscribe, and share. Thank you once again, and we'll see you next time.